following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers. A dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends. A place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view. But when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me. Well, not really with me. I'm a little concerned. He's all the way out in Florida. No man's land. Well, every man's land, apparently, because that's where all the men live, and they're all crazy. Tim, are you safe?
It's kind of an objective term, I guess. Have
you been eaten by a crocodile?
No.
Have you been bitten by a snake?
No.
Have you been held up at knife point by a man wearing no pants and a Darth Vader mask?
Yeah, they call it Thursday here.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. All right. Well, you're in Florida. Today is Supernatural News Day. Let's get the ball rolling. Where are we going to begin today's journey in supernatural news, Tim?
The tourist attraction dropping its ghostly status because it's scaring people off, Dave. You know, haunted ghost tours are not what they used to be. And it turns out that when you show up to these things, evidently you get scared. Who knew? I didn't. I figured you just showed up to these things. It was a good old-fashioned, romp in the hay and you're gone.
What? Romp in the hay?
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't.
I can never find you at these damn paranormal conferences.
That's not what you do?
No, you're supposed to be hunting ghosts and talking to people, not romping in hay.
Oh.
Good Lord, man.
I got it all wrong then. Tales of lost souls and enraged spirits once intrigued guests at Oakabella Homestead, which previously boasted the title of Western Australia's most haunted building, but now it is trying to shake the label because it is scaring visitors away. Dave, it's living up to its billing, unfortunately.
Suddenly I'm intrigued.
Suddenly you're intrigued. Built in 1851, the homestead was established only 10 years before its closest neighboring town, Northampton, which is 460 kilometers from Perth in the picturesque Chapman Valley. Its newest business owners, Belinda Turner and Brian Snelson, are turning over a new leaf because the haunted buildings are failing to attract visitors, particularly Chinese tourists. I had no idea they were that afraid. Chinese.
Well, I don't know that it's that they're that afraid, but Chinese tourists love to go to these different places. Australia is huge for Chinese tourists.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and they love the paranormal, the supernatural. But you're saying it's even frightening them off.
Yes. Yep. Ms. Turner said they were focusing on teaching people about the homestead's rich history and working with other community groups to offer things like stargazing, campfires, and bush tucker. What's a bush tucker, Dave?
I don't know. Is it somebody that at night goes outside and puts a blanket around the bushes and goes, "Hello, mate, have a good night"?
It must be. I shudder to think. There are some articles we have read online, and it is quite interesting to read the feedback, she said. Not everyone is into ghosts, and that was definitely portrayed in the Facebook comments. People will not come here if they think it is haunted, so that is why we are bringing it back to the history. The Midwest region is a popular place for Chinese tourists, like locations like the Port Gregory Pink Lakes and the, is it Abrolhos Islands? Yeah, sure. Proving to be a major natural draw card.
You do know I live in Minnesota, right?
Well,
I don't know the names of all these things.
But you've been to this country, Dave.
Yeah, but you know where I was?
Practically your backyard.
I was in Rougarou County.
Yeah, Rougarou
That's
County.
Australian for beer. Yeah. I was there, and that's it. That's it. So I don't know much. Melbourne, Sydney. I think I was in Sydney because I saw the Opera House.
I mean, this is like your old stomping grounds. I mean, you practically went to high school here.
No, I was pretty much forced. I was chained to a radiator in my room until I was called upon for the conferences.
Yeah.
I was fed gruel. I think. Yeah, I told you, they wouldn't make scrambled eggs for me.
They wouldn't?
In Australia. It was crazy. Yeah, I'm being dead serious. But anyway, so there's a lot going on, is what you're saying, and it's so active that it's scaring people off, so they're going to actually turn their back on the paranormal aspect of this. Do they think that will stop the paranormal from happening if they just don't bill it as a paranormal hotspot?
I don't know. Right now I'm on the Chinese part of this deal. It says the Midwest region is a popular place for Chinese tourists, with locations like the Port Gregory Pink Lakes and, of course, the islands we were talking about. City of Greater Geraldton Economic Development Officer Hanji Davis grew up in Beijing and said haunted building and ghost stories are a major turnoff for Chinese people. I am Chinese and I have lived in Australia, but if you tell me that this place is the most haunted estate, then I would be scared, she said. She said marketing the region to Chinese tourists meant getting to know the culture. A lot of people think they have so much to offer, but without knowing and understanding Chinese culture, it is very difficult to find what appeals to the Chinese people, she said. Well, international tourist numbers have declined over the past year. The Midwest has seen an increase in Chinese tourist numbers. Ms. Davis said local businesses and attractions need to offer packages that provide a unique experience. They come here because in China, in the big cities, they do not see the horizon and they cannot see starry nights. So for that, the Chinese will come to Australia.
Because we're flat Earth.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean,
no horizon when you have a flat Earth.
I mean, you can see all the way to Washington, D.C. from there, I guess.
Yeah, if you try. Yeah, you just got to get up high enough.
The flat Earth and all. Ms. Turner said they understood Chinese visitors wanted to experience an authentic outback farm experience. The Chinese, we believe, are more interested in learning about our country, she said. They want to know how the original people ate, how they cooked their food, and we want to go down the line showing them good old Aussie tradition. The pair will still offer the occasional night tour of the old homestead for those brave enough to enter the buildings after dark. But Mr. Snelson said most of the time the homestead would host heritage tours, stargazing nights, and daily traditional high teas. We ourselves are more passionate about the history side of things, he said. The spiritual ghost side of things is something we are a bit less believing in. We obviously do not have the sixth sense to pick up on those sort of things. There you go.
All right. That's what they tell us. I don't believe it. I've picked up on things. You've picked up on things. Yeah. And I'm not even talking about at the end of bar night, Tim. I'm talking paranormal experiences.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or is that when bush tuckers work most?
Yeah, I mean,
the end of bar night.
I like a good bush tucking after a heavy night at the bar. So.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Yeah. The film studio behind Get Out and Paranormal Activity is coming to Hulu, Dave.
Hulu?
Yeah. Who knew Hulu?
All right.
Yeah.
What's going on?
For a monthly horror anthology series that debuts this October. The narrow line separating television and film just got a whole lot narrower. Hulu announced that they have ordered a monthly horror anthology series from Blumhouse TV, the television arm of uber successful horror studio headed by Jason Blum. Blumhouse Productions has brought Get Out, The Purge, Paranormal Activity, and more to cinemas. The new series is titled Into the Dark and will debut a new supersized episode each month starting on October 5th for 12 months, according to a Hulu press release, with Variety first reporting the news. Each of the 12 episodes will be loosely based on or influenced by a holiday occurring in that month. Oh, I shudder to think about Arbor Day, Dave. I really do.
Not Arbor Day.
Yeah, that's the scariest of all holidays. Unfortunately, November's offering won't be Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, but don't hold that against us if it is. The first is The Body, not the Stephen King novella, though King's Castle Rock does debut on Hulu in July. It's directed by Paul Davis. The Body is based on Davis's short film by the same name and stars Tom Bateman of Murder on the Orient Express, Rebecca Rittenhouse of The Mindy Project, Aurora Perrineau of Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, David Hull of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and Ray Santiago of Ash vs. the Evil Dead. And Hulu has described the plot thusly. That'll be the only time I'll use that word today. Set in the selfie culture of Los Angeles on Halloween night, The Body follows a sophisticated, overconfident hitman who always carries out his work in style. He decides to take things even further one day by transporting his latest victim in plain sight, correctly assuming that self-absorbed LA partiers will simply be enamored with his elaborate costume. Eventually, as his window of opportunity to dispose of the body begins to close, Wilkes' true colors will reveal themselves to some groupies that have latched onto him. It will become a battle of will and wits. There's that. Then November's supersized episode, some may call them films, will be Flesh and Blood, directed by Patrick Lussier of My Bloody Valentine, and will be released on Friday, November 2nd. And per Hulu, they say that Dermot Mulroney will star as Henry, a doting father trying to help his daughter. Kimberly, a teenager suffering from agoraphobia who has not left the house since her mother's still unsolved murder, will be part of that cast. Kimberly is played by newcomer Dana Silver, and Tembi Locke of Eureka plays her therapist. Set on the evening of Thanksgiving, a year after her mother's death, Kimberly begins to suspect that she is in danger in her home, but she can't leave and doesn't know anyone that she can trust. The headwinds of pop culture seem to be blowing in the direction of both serialization and anthology simultaneously. The most successful films in the world now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, have adopted some serialization from television, while the most buzzed-about TV shows, Black Mirror and American Horror Story, have adopted some film festival and anthological aspects from movies. Into the Dark appears to continue the two trends while also incorporating one thing in pop culture that never goes out of style, and that is horror.
Horror, you say?
Horror.
Hey, I know I just shot you one of the stories recently. There's another TV show I'm pretty excited about coming out. They've been talking about this, and Into the Shadows is going to get the TV turn. Have you seen that yet?
I did see the story briefly. You're talking about the hit horror or comedy mockumentary, What We Do in the Shadows. It's being developed into a TV series for FX, documented by Daily Dead. FX has issued a press release announcing the What We Do in the Shadows series. The show will be based on the movie and will feature the same name. Each episode will be a half hour long, and the first season will consist of 10 episodes. Co-creators Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, hey, he did that Thor movie, didn't he? Will be the executive producers, and the pair also starred in the film alongside Johnny, I believe, is it Brew? Might be Brew. When What We Do in the Shadows was released in 2014, it quickly gained a cult following, and it remains one of the highest-rated horror movies on Amazon Prime. Out of over 3,500 votes, the film has 4.5 out of 5 stars. The movie follows 3 vampires, Viago, Vladislav, and Deacon, who have lived together for hundreds of years in Wellington, New Zealand. The mockumentary reveals how the bloodsuckers struggle with the minutiae of everyday life, like keeping up with house chores, paying the rent, and the drama that comes with having multiple roommates. The FX series will share a similar premise, but the trio of vamps will be living in New York City. There's no news yet on the cast for the series, but fans will probably love to see the original stars reprise their roles.
It is. It's pretty cool. Have you ever watched the mockumentary?
I have not, no.
It's funny that they put it in horror. I mean, I get the idea because it's about vampires and werewolves, but it's really a comedy, and it is so well done. And especially kind of tapping into that market of the whole Twilight realm and kind of, cashing in on real reality TV. It's really well done, dude. I think you'd get a kick out of it. If you haven't watched it, try it out. Watch it.
It says here, too, that there's also a feature-length sequel to the film coming out with a working title of Werewolves. And believe it or not, it's about werewolves.
Awesome.
Yeah, it says the sequel focuses on the werewolves that were depicted in the first film. The creative duo is also planning a New Zealand series, Wellington Paranormal, based on the 2 cops, Karen and Mike, who were briefly featured in the movie. The show was originally titled Paranormal Event Response Unit. There you go. There's that.
The werewolves are hilarious.
Yeah.
They're proper. It's funny. It's there's just a cute scene where they come in. I think they're like passing by the vampires, and they start kind of. They're all in human form at that time, and they're kind of goading each other on like street gangs.
Mm-hmm.
And the one starts swearing, and the lead werewolf is like, hey, we're werewolves, not swearwolves. It's a really clever series, or a movie, I should say. So check it out. All right, where are we off to next?
Next, we will go to Turkey's Coram, where a mystery girl shows up crying at a cemetery at night and becomes a sensation.
Wow.
Kind of an odd twist. A young woman...
Now she's on tour with the Dancing with the Stars cast of Turkey?
Yeah, unusually so. Yeah, they needed a bit of a change-up between acts, I guess. A young woman showing up at a cemetery and crying in front of a grave for 5 nights in a row has caused a stir in Turkey's central city of Coram. Employees at the Grand Ulu Cemetery, located in the city's, I believe it's the Sepni neighborhood, saw the unidentified woman, believed to be 17 or 18 years old, on the night of April 26, crying next to a grave. The same girl was also seen near the grave of Fatma C., who died in 1982, in the next 3 nights. The issue turned into a local sensation, prompting officials to leave a note by the grave on April 30th, asking the girl to contact them if she needs help or support. The police launched a search operation to find the girl, as the locals were both curious and frightened by the incident. Many locals arrived on the scene to see whether the girl will come by the grave, only to be turned away by police. The girl, wearing black clothing and red shoes, came by the grave Tuesday night but ran away in the dark as the police were trying to catch her. On Wednesday, the police had to set up a security barrier around the cemetery to keep away some 300 curious bystanders, with some bringing snacks, waiting to see if the girl would come again. A group of youngsters tried to enter the cemetery through the wall with a ladder, leading to a brief scuffle with police and 4 people being detained. A night vision-compatible security camera and a photo trap were installed near the grave by the Coram municipality to capture the girl's footage and to identify her. The police conducted a thorough search in the cemetery and surrounding areas for 8 hours, but could not find any evidence. She is probably a drunk or drug addict, Omer Sen, a professional gravedigger who works at the cemetery, said as he dispels rumors among locals claiming that she is a ghost. It is impossible, Sen told Dogan News Agency, while lamenting the incident gave Coram a bad name.
I thought You Give Love a bad name. I remember that. But them giving Coram a bad name?
I don't know that Coram really has developed a really bad reputation. I mean, you think about the drug dens of the world, and Coram doesn't necessarily make the top 10. I mean,
True.
There's that, yeah.
All right, where are we off to next?
Well, a sheriff's office is responding to reports of a UFO landing in a field. Meanwhile, I'm watching Donald Trump speak about it on television, right on the old internet's webs there, Dave. We go to Princeton, where deputies with the Collin County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to call in the Princeton area after reports of a UFO with different color flashing lights landed in the field. Their hunt for an alien invasion was squashed, however, when all they found was a remote-controlled helicopter. Wah, wah. The department had fun with the investigation, though, talking about it with a tongue-in-cheek post on Facebook. Oh, you silly, silly police. It said, "Breaking news, we are no longer on the hunt for a UFO or alien invasion, but we could still use your help," the post began on Facebook. After arriving on the scene and thinking, this could be the biggest scientific discovery ever, we began our field search, the post continued. During the search for the UFO, we soon discovered we weren't hunting aliens and that our scientific discovery would have to wait for another day, officials continued on Facebook. What we discovered was a remote-controlled helicopter with the hashtag, "not as exciting as aliens." The helicopter is in the property room at the sheriff's office awaiting its rightful owner. Yeah.
Weird stuff. All right, where are we off to next?
Well, a ghost is flying straight at the camera in a spine-tingling footage from an 800-year-old graveyard. Tony Ferguson said he captured the moment. A controlling spirit flew straight at him as footage appears to show a smoky white figure heading towards his camera. A fitness trainer has claimed he was attacked by a ghost as he explored an 800-year-old graveyard said to be haunted. Tony Ferguson says he captured the moment that a spirit flew straight at him as he roamed the cemetery at St. Mary's Church in Ellinghants. I believe it's Hants. The 33-year-old's footage appears to show a smoky white mist heading towards his camera, which he claims was a ghost whizzing past him. Oh, you always want the ghost to whiz past you. Otherwise, you got an R. Kelly situation here, Dave. And we never want that. Tony, a personal trainer and paranormal investigator, says he decided to scout the cemetery and follow reports of a negative presence felt by visitors while tending to their loved ones' graves. He said after watching his video in slow motion, he believes that the spirit was a controlling gentleman trying to deter people from visiting the graveyard. Tony from Southampton added that he felt unwanted as soon as he stepped foot in the cemetery and claimed his footage was evidence that a spirit was patrolling the grounds. He said, "I don't usually investigate cemeteries. I don't believe that just because people are buried there that they must be haunted. But a few people got in touch to tell me they were concerned about their loved ones who are buried there. Every time they went there, they felt that there was this negative presence, and it was making them very uncomfortable." He also went on to say, "The whole time that I was in the cemetery, I could feel this bad energy. I felt like something didn't want me there. My REM pod, a device for communicating with spirits, kept going off as well as I was sure that there was something paranormal going on there. Then suddenly I heard this whoosh. It came out of a grave and it went straight past me. When I watched back the footage and actually saw the spirit flying at me, it was really weird. It was a very strange experience, but it was also great to have how you feel validated. You also wonder if it's just something in the air or your mind playing tricks on you, but you can't argue with visual evidence. If you slow down the footage, you can see the spirit is actually trying to manifest and take form. It is definitely an angry spirit. The cemetery is very old, and I think the ghost is of a gentleman who feels very possessive over it. He is very clearly a very controlling spirit and doesn't want people visiting the graveyard. But I don't think his negative energy is any risk to other people buried there. It is nice for me to be able to give that reassurance to people who are worried and give them some peace of mind." Tony got into ghost hunting just over a year ago after developing a fascination with the paranormal as a child. Throughout his childhood, Tony had a number of ghostly encounters with the spirits of a man and young girl in his grandfather's house. After his paranormal experiences only became more frequent as an adult, Tony became convinced that something about his energy attracts ghosts. Tony said, "My granddad's house was haunted. There were loads of activity there with things flying around and the spirits of a man and girl always visiting, so I was constantly surrounded by it. Growing up around it meant I was intrigued from a young age, and as I got older, I realized that I had this gift where any time I went into a haunted place, spirits would appear. It must be something about my energy that just attracts them. It did used to scare me, but I got used to it now, and most spirits aren't harmful at all. I decided to pursue this gift and picked up paranormal investigation as a hobby. At first, I didn't share my videos or photos with anyone because it was a very personal journey. But after a while, I decided I wanted to share some of the amazing things that I have seen to open other people's eyes to the paranormal world." There you go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, guys, don't forget Mother's Day is almost here. It's Sunday, May 13th. Have you gotten that special mom in your life anything yet? Remember, I mean, it doesn't always just have to be your mom. Maybe you've got an aunt that helped raise you or a grandmother that was important to your life. Maybe a godmother. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of great people out there that are deserving of a little happiness in their life. And let's face it, things aren't going great in the world. And wouldn't it be great to just, for a few shekels, Tim, put smiles on people's faces?
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you could do that?
A little song, a little dance, a little salsa in your pants?
How about flowers, Tim? Because you can't go wrong with flowers.
That's true. Yeah.
And friends of our show, FromYouFlowers.com has a fantastic deal right now for Beyond the Darkness listeners. If you go to FromYouFlowers.com/beyond, you can send 1 dozen mixed roses, Tim. How much do you think 1 dozen mixed roses for Mother's Day is going to set you back?
This time of year, Dave, $65.
Oh, Tim, you are wrong. You are so wrong. You want to try that again?
$50?
No, Tim. How about $19.99?
I'll take it.
That's what we do for you. If you need to really make an impression, though, you can upgrade to 2 dozen mixed roses and add a free vase for just $10 more, Tim.
Wow.
Yeah, $29.99 for a big arrangement of 24 roses and a free vase delivered in time for the mother of all holidays. Listen, you thought for a dozen beautiful, wild, and mixed roses at this time of year, maybe $60. That means you could get 3 different people a dozen beautiful roses, Tim, sent to them and cheer them up for what you thought you were going to pay for just one set. For $19.99, you get a dozen mixed, or for $10 more, you get 2 dozen mixed roses and a free vase. $29.99 for a big arrangement of 24 roses, the free vase delivered in time for the mother of all holidays. FromYouFlowers.com/beyond. That's FROMYOU. FLOWERS.com/beyond. I'm going to go with 2 dozen. I think I mentioned this to you before, Tim. 1 for my wife and 1 for the memory of my mother. And we'll have them here together. And I'll have my mom's urn is right here prominently displayed in our home. And this will be a beautiful way to pay tribute to my mom and to the best mom I know, my wife. So that'll be a great way to do this. And how about you, Tim? Have you got your plan set? Have you ordered your flowers yet?
Well, yes, I have.
Oh, yeah. And where did you order them from, Tim?
Well, where do you think
From You Flowers?
Well, yeah.
You better have. FromYouFlowers.com/beyond. Make sure you add that /beyond to get these deals. Plus, they guarantee the freshness and on-time delivery. But order today. Supplies are limited, and they will sell out. All right, Tim, where are we off to next in the world of supernatural news?
We're going to talk UFOs, Dave.
Okay, what's going on?
Military pilots are interacting with UFOs in the local skies, or are they? That's the question mark here, Dave.
What?
I put a question mark after it, Dave, because that's the question. I'm being all cryptic and stuff.
Wow.
We go to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where recently released videos purport to show military pilots seeing UFOs, but what exactly are they seeing? The group, To the Stars Academy for Arts and Science, obtained the videos, say that they're evidence that pilots are coming into contact with unidentified foreign objects, not flying objects, Dave, foreign objects.
Interesting.
Rob Swiatek, a UFO researcher and board member of the Mutual UFO Network, or the kids call it MUFON, Dave, says that...
So do us old guys.
Oh, they do? Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe because they don't have much time left. That maybe that's
could be. Yeah, we got to shorten everything. Move on. Say that these types of sightings have been happening for decades. We can't really explain it, Swiatek said. The UFOs seem to be moving in intelligent manners, intelligent patterns, and it does not seem to be a natural phenomenon. Each year, there are thousands of reports of UFOs across the country and world. According to Swiatek, UFO investigators are generally able to determine explanations for the vast majority, but he says about 20% remain a mystery. Ultimately, I conjecture that we're dealing with another intelligence, but I can't prove it, he said. Following the release of the videos, there's a renewed interest in whether or not aliens are piloting UFOs. In December, the New York Times reported on a military program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which looked into the reports of UFOs. Defense officials say the programs ended in 2012, but others say the work continues. There you go. Short but sweet and to the point. I like that. Short and sweet, just like my wife. Where are we going next?
Oh, gosh. Look at this story. Do I even dare read this? Eaten alive, a woman is known for beauty, suffers a horrific death at a nursing home.
Oh, my God, Tim?
Yeah.
I'm just forewarning our listeners, you are going to leave this story forever changed.
Okay.
Forever changed, Tim.
Forever changed.
All right. I will be here cringing and twitching through this entire story. Go ahead.
All right. An investigation uncovered a Georgia nursing home resident who died from a scabies infestation. A forensic pathologist who reviewed the case estimates millions of parasitic mites essentially ate her alive over several months or possibly years.
Being eaten alive, miniature bugs feasting on your innards, your body parts. Mm-hmm. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse, Tim.
According to a pending lawsuit filed by the family, 93-year-old Rebecca Zenny died in 2015 from scabies at the facility. The autopsy report shows the cause of death as septicemia due to crusted scabies. State health officials were notified about a scabies outbreak at the nursing home multiple times, but did not inspect the Lafayette, Georgia facility. Zenny's family say their mother lived the American dream. She worked in a naval yard during World War II, modeled in New York City, and worked at a TV station in Chicago. Zenny's daughter, who declined to be interviewed on camera, says she moved her mother into Shepherd Hills nursing home in 2010. Health records showed Zenny suffered from dementia. Mike Prieto and Stephen Chance are the attorneys representing Zenny's family in a lawsuit against Pruitt Health, which operates Shepherd Hills nursing home where Zenny died. I don't understand how. So
imagine that real quickly. You're dealing with dementia, so people are pretty much ignoring your outlandish claims and things you say anyway.
Yep.
And if you're telling them that this is going on, you'd think, okay, well, I can kind of understand how nurses may have missed this, right? Mm-hmm. It could have been that, but it gets worse, Tim.
I don't understand how you can allow a human being to suffer needlessly, said Prieto. Scabies is a painful but treatable skin condition caused when parasitic mites burrow into your skin, lay eggs, and survive off of your body. Pictures of Zenny before her death show skin flaking off and one of her hands blackened. Chance claims staff were told not to touch Zenny's hand. There was a conversation at this nursing home with a healthcare provider about being careful about touching Ms. Zenny's hand for fear that it might fall off of her body. Claims Chance in an interview.
At what point do you think maybe medical attention should have been called in?
Right.
Hey, be careful. Don't touch her hand. It looked like it may fall off. Yeah, might want to get that checked. I don't know. I'm not. Listen, I'm no hypochondriac.
I am now.
Yes, right. Are you not itching right now? My skin is crawling. But this is horrific. This is what, folks, don't just put your people in an old folks home and forget about them. Visit, show them love and attention, whether they're all there or not. Part of you is getting through to them. And this couldn't go on. This shouldn't go on. Oh, her hand was blackening, and they were so worried they didn't want anybody to touch it. So does that mean she didn't get bathed, Tim?
It's got to mean that, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Or barely bathed, one or the other.
People are like, what does this have to do with the paranormal? Hey, we talk about all kinds of scary things. This, to me, is horrifying. Tim, we worry about AI. Mm-hmm. We worry about the rise of the Terminators, the zombie apocalypse, perhaps talking apes taking over the world. What if it's that we're going to be devoured by microscopic scabies?
11 Alive News asked forensic pathologist Dr. Chris Sperry to review Zenny's autopsy report. He's the former chief medical examiner at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Sperry says
he go on record saying, ew,
ew. He literally crawled up the wall. Sperry says he's personally conducted more than 6,000 autopsies and has supervised more than 80,000 others. And this is one of the most horrendous things I've ever seen in my career as a forensic pathologist, said Sperry about Zenny's autopsy report. Sperry estimates hundreds of millions of mites were living inside Zenny at the time of her death.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah. He doesn't think it's an exaggeration to assume she was essentially eaten alive and that she likely died a painful death. Having seen what I've seen with Ms. Zenny, I think that is frankly a good characterization, said Sperry. I would seriously consider calling this a homicide by neglect. A local television station called and emailed Pruitt's health chairman, and a communications director, and an attorney representing the company numerous times for a response. Not one person responded. Not one. According to a response to the lawsuit, Pruitt attorneys denied all of the claims outlined in Zenny's lawsuit, writing, Pruitt Health denies that it is a medical or health care provider, and it therefore owed no legal duty to plaintiff or Miss Rebecca Zenny, for which it could be held liable in this litigation. Wow. According to records obtained from the Georgia Department of Public Health, state officials were notified of a scabies outbreak at Zenny's facility in 2013 and 2015 before her death. In its June 4th, 2015 report, it shows at least 35 residents and staff were exposed to scabies. Instead of inspecting the facility in person, a state health department employee emailed a manual to the facility on how to treat scabies. 11 days later, Zenny passed away. just email the manual.
I just want to go get in the shower with like a stick with 6 SOS scrubbing pads on it and just Did you hear the story about the news story about the woman who had the cockroach in her ear?
Yeah, I think if it's the one I'm thinking of.
She seems kind of lame now, doesn't she?
Yeah.
One cockroach, tens of millions.
Yeah.
Or was it? No, I'm sorry, hundreds of millions of scabies eating her alive. You got one cockroach, it's like a pet at that point, Tim.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's switch it up to something a little more lighthearted. Wow. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. We'll talk about their new New York cottage home. It could be haunted, Dave. The young royal couple may be running straight into ghosts. Prince Harry and his soon-to-be wife, Meghan Markle, could end up living in a haunted house in the countryside, which has been dubbed by some as red brick horror if the Queen decides to give them the home as a wedding present. The monarch has been tipped to present the royal couple with York Cottage as a lavish gift when they marry in just 2 weeks' time. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle already have Nottingham Cottage in Kensington Palace, where they now live, so this would be their country retreat. I feel sorry for them. However, according to the Daily Star, their house is haunted by the ghost of Prince Eddie. Prince Eddie Albert, Dave, lives in... No, I'm kidding.
I loved him on Green Acres.
I did, too. He was fabulous. Who was due to inherit the throne until his early death at the age of 28 in 1892. Some authors have even claimed that the prince was the infamous serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. According to the Mail Online, the house has been described by one visitor as a glum little villa surrounded by thickets of laurel and with a pond at the edge of which a leaden pelican gazes in dejection on the water beneath. It sounds beautiful, Dave. I don't know if you know that or not. It also says the rooms inside with their fumed oak surrounds are indistinguishable from those of any Surbiton home. It sounds lovely. The cottage is currently a staff office for the Sandringham estate, and part of it has been turned into flats, so renovation works would be required before Prince Harry and Meghan would be able to move in. The house
How about the scabies? How many scabies do they have
millions,
there? Any count? Millions?
Yeah.
Don't do it.
The scabies come with the house, actually. Yeah. The house is located next to a lake on the edge of woodland and has beautiful views across Sandringham Park from the upstairs windows. In 1893, the stately home was given to Prince George, later King George V, by his father, the Prince of Wales, and future King Edward VII, as his wedding present.
You have to ask yourself at this point, why doesn't anybody want this house that everybody keeps giving it away? Scabies or ghosts, Tim? Or worse, ghosts with scabies?
I think it's ghosts with scabies, yeah. Prince George married Victoria Mary of Tark, known as Mary, and the couple moved into the Sandringham Cottage together. If Meghan and Harry, we call them Mary, they're kind of a couple, are given the house, it is not known how much time they spend there together, or that they will spend there together. When Prince William got married to Kate in 2011, he was given the gift of Anmer Hall by the Queen in the Sandringham estate. So there you go.
Oof.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with that, Meghan and Harry, or Mary, as Tim and I like to call you.
We call them Mary because they're a couple.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Where are we off to next?
The Dead Sea Scroll fragments, Dead Sea Scrolls fragments contain writing invisible to the naked eye, Dave. Evidently, somebody found some little writings in there, and we can't see them because they're too small. I say get some bifocals. That's what I say. They're wonderful. The small size and precarious physical state meant some of them had not previously been sorted or deciphered, according to some of these people looking them over. We call them scientists. Technology originally developed for NASA has revealed letters invisible to the naked eye on fragments of the 2,000-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls, this according to officials. The scrolls were discovered in the 1950s by archaeologists and Bedouin in caves near Qumran on the West Bank near the Dead Sea, and include tens of thousands of parchment and papyrus fragments that are thought to belong to approximately 1,000 different manuscripts. The Israeli Antiquities Authority said examinations of some fragments that had not previously been sorted or deciphered due to their small size and precarious physical state. But that's okay. We still think you're a good little scroll. I mean, your physical size has nothing to do with anything. Don't you get down.
Size does not matter.
That's right.
When you're holy scrolls.
You're still a good little scroll. Uncovered new script and pointed to the existence of an unknown manuscript. As part of a project to digitize the scrolls, researcher Oren Abelman examined a few dozen fragments and discovered traces of ink on many fragments that appeared blank to the naked eye, the authorities said in a statement. One of those fragments could not be attributed to any known manuscripts, raising the possibility that it belongs to a still unknown text. Other fragments have been identified as belonging to the books of Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Jubilees. Oh, from the X-Men.
I don't believe that's true.
I'm familiar with her part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, it was kind of vapid and full of fireworks, but it was pretty good. One is from the Temple Scroll, which another has been identified as belonging to the Great Psalm Scroll. The authorities said the fragments provide new insights to researchers studying the scrolls. So there you go.
Interesting stuff. Wouldn't it be funny if it's like the book we didn't know about and it's the punchline chapter and it's all like, hey, we've just been kidding. Go ahead, live life as you want. Boom.
I think it's actually the part of the Dead Sea Scrolls that has the Bazooka Joe comic on it.
Oh, that very well could be.
Really tiny.
You know what you need to do is you just take some silly putty and press it on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, yeah.
Rock it back and forth and then peel it off because it picks up all the writing. You'll be able to see everything, even the hidden text.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then we can get the little joke of the day off of it. That'll be... do you think they were pretty good jokes back then? I mean, they're the originals.
I doubt it. They're not even good jokes now.
Yeah.
All right. How many more do we have to go?
One more story here, Dave. You know, we get a lot of letters and letters of people who say, I love clowns. I just love the clowns. Can't get enough of the clowns.
The clowns, where are they now? I'm Robert Davi. No, sorry. Go on.
So we saved the best for last, kids. A young mother dressed as a clown tried to make her boyfriend a human sacrifice.
Wait,
justifying...
what?
Yep.
What?
Justifying your fear of clowns. Although, you know, it would be kind of hot.
Like we need the Halloween theme behind her. Ding, 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 ding. So a mother dressed as a clown decided to sacrifice her boyfriend for a human sacrifice.
Yep. Although it would be kind of hot if the old lady dressed up as a clown. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, what?
What?
Oh, good grief.
You know, that kind of porn's out there, Dave.
I guess.
A 19-year-old British woman was sentenced to 11 and a half years in jail in a bizarre incident in which she repeatedly stabbed her 17-year-old lover in her bed and said she blacked out and had no memory of the attack. Zoe Adams, hottest clown ever, and a mother, admitted to the charge of unlawfully and maliciously wounding Kieran Bewick, whatever, he's stabbed now, with the intent to do him grievous bodily harm, according to Cumbria police. Cumbria is a county in northwest England. I'm glad they put that there for me because I had no idea. According to the Telegraph, Adams had been dressed up as a clown, the cutest thing ever, and placed a pillow over, we'll just say it's Bewick's. I sound like Elmer Fudd. Bewick's head.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, Bewick. During the sexual encounter. Oh, she's so hot. I want to meet this chick. Dressed up as a clown, put a pillow over his head, so there's a little asphyxiation going on. Cumbria's police said Adams explained to the court that it was to make it more kink, quote unquote. Dave, I want to meet this girl. I
think she's going to be single real soon.
I think so too.
That opportunity may come quicker than you think.
Yep. She then stabbed Bewick 5 times in his chest, arm, and thigh with a 10-inch knife. This according to the Telegraph. Yeah, she got a little too carried away with the kink, I'm thinking. His lung collapsed, Dave, and then he was rushed to emergency surgery in nearby Newcastle. I can say that 10 times fast. Text messages in court showed Adams wanted to make Bewick a human sacrifice. Yeah. I don't think about males unless said male is strapped up and being used as a human sacrifice, one text read in part. The hot factor just dropped for me. Adams claimed that she could not remember committing the attack due to excessive use of alcohol and marijuana. No duh. Bewick a fantasy novelist, reportedly told the court, "I struggle with the knowledge that someone I genuinely cared about would do this to me." It's okay, Barwick. He also said he had a long-standing fear of clowns, which Adams exploited. Oh, she is evil. I think I'm in love. "I have always had a fear of clowns, and Zoe knows this," he said. "This will now only increase my fear of clowns."
So was she originally trying to kill him to death by hoping he would have a self-inflicted heart attack because he saw a clown in his room? When that didn't work, she tried to suffocate him. When that didn't work, she took to poking him? With a knife, Tim, stabbing him.
Yeah. I'm guessing. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
I think she's here. I'll try to get you an email. Or if you're listening, you can simply just call Tim at 612. Well, she might not have access to
Dave,
an email, Tim. She's in prison, but she can give you a collect call at 612. What? Tim, you wanted love. I'm trying to bring it to you.
She can simply write me a handwritten letter and send it to my municipality.
Yeah, just send it right to his house. That's probably the best way to go. It's 1045. What?
I don't want her to have my exact address.
Oh. Okay, well, how about it's 1045 wink wink. What? I was going to give her the wrong last number.
No, Dave.
Oh.
Just send it to the local post office and I'll come pick it up.
All right. We have to take a break. We'll come back. We've got your ParaShare stories, your encounters next on the best in paranormal talk radio. That's him. I'm me. And this is Beyond the Darkness.
The hit true crime series, Murder Made Me Famous, is now on Podcast One, showcasing some of the most notorious crimes imaginable, including Scott Peterson, Jodi Arias, Ted Bundy, and more. See how murder made them famous. New episodes starting every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, as well as PodcastOne.com and the Podcast One app. And check out the new season of Murder Made Me Famous starting Saturday, April 14th on the Reels channel.
Hey, this is Chris Jericho inviting you to the first ever rock and wrestling Rager at Sea. Picture this: rock and roll, wrestling, comedy, live podcasting, all on the open ocean from October 27th to the 31st, 2018, from Miami to Nassau. I'm bringing Hall of Fame wrestlers, some of the greatest rock and roll bands on the planet, and putting the first wrestling ring on a cruise ship ever. Don't be a stupid idiot. Make the list. Check us out at ChrisJerichoCruise.com.
Beyond the Darkness.
Hello, welcome back to the show. This is Beyond the Darkness. It's time now for ParaShare, Tim. Do you know how that works?
I have no idea. I think it's something about parasites, and when we swap them between each other. And
No. We're going to leave the scaby stories in the last segment, Tim.
Oh, okay.
This segment, the ParaShare, which we love to do, is a staple of our show and will continue to be forever, is your stories. The listeners can send in their personal accounts of the paranormal, and we're going to share them on the show. How cool is that?
Very cool.
We're also working on a new telos system, Tim, so we should be able to start taking phone calls so people can call in and share their stories as well. Isn't that pretty neat?
Very neat.
That's what's going on. So let's get started, though. We've got some emails to get to, Tim. Hey, Tim and Dave. I hope this email finds you well. I was catching up on the episodes of the podcast when I heard you say that you wanted to hear some haunted hospital stories. So I figured I would send you a strange encounter I had at my previous job. If I may, I would like to let you know a little about myself. I was a cardiac nurse for 8 years at a local hospital in my hometown in Tennessee. I left that job several years ago to fulfill a dream of becoming a police officer. So needless to say, I analyze things through the lenses of science and facts. That's what makes what I'm about to tell you hard for me to believe. If I hadn't seen it with my own two eyes, I wouldn't believe it. Several years ago, I was working night shift on a medical surgical floor. There were 3 different nursing teams on the floor, each team covering 10 rooms. Is this going to be a math test at the end of this, Tim? Do I have to kick off a shoe to keep up and figure out what the number is?
I'm now completely naked trying to figure this out.
Oh, God. During a lull in the action, I walked to the back nurse's station to talk to a buddy of mine about borrowing a vial of insulin. While we were talking, I saw something moving in my peripheral vision. When I looked up, I saw an elderly man with thinning white hair standing in the doorway. I noticed he was wearing a standard hospital gown and green non-slip socks. I assumed it was a patient needing something. Often patients get bored just lying around, and if they need something, they just stand in the doorway instead of hitting the call light. I looked at this gentleman and said, "Give me a second, I'll be right in." He just smiled and walked back into the room. So after grabbing some insulin, I went into the room to see if he needed a refill of water or perhaps even a snack. As I entered the room, I stopped dead in my tracks. The room, Tim, it was empty.
Uh-oh.
And when I say empty, I mean just that. The bed was made, the room was set up and ready for the next admission. I checked the bathroom just to make sure a confused patient hadn't wandered into the wrong room by accident. But again, I found nothing. When I walked out of the room, I guess I had a confused look on my face because as I looked at the nurse at the nurse's station, he asked, "Did the patient not need anything?" I told him, "There's no patient. The room is empty." He asked, "Where did he go?" "I don't know," is all I could say. This experience wasn't ominous or scary, just confusing. This is probably the strangest thing I've ever experienced. And I haven't had an experience like that since. But at least I know I'm not crazy, because the nurse I was talking to saw him as well. Keep up the good work. Your show makes these long nights on patrol much more enjoyable. Joey Beasley. All right, Joey, thank you for sharing that. That was, I still think that's a little weird and chilling.
Very, yeah.
Maybe I'm just, I'm too jaded, Tim.
No?
No? All right. Just another blah, blah, blah is how this email starts. I have no idea where this is going now.
All right.
This could go horribly bad for all of us. Hello, Dave and Tim, as it should be. I hope you and your loved ones are well. Forgive me for any spelling and punctuation errors. I'm using my broken cell phone to send this story. I transferred to a new office for my employer and family, and I relocated to the Mojave County in Arizona. My wife, kids, and I were staying with a friend of hers for a few weeks. While we were getting situated, we were in a one-bedroom casita, so space was very limited. My wife and kids were asleep on the main floor in bed, and I was asleep on a mattress next to the bed. Our dresser mirror was directly behind my head while I was asleep. I was awakened one morning, and I wound up looking into the mirror and noticed a very large humanoid shadow walking away from where I was laying. I stood up immediately, and there was the shadow, larger than me, and I'm 6'3", and in somewhat decent shape. It just walked away, swinging its shoulders with a cocky swagger across the living room and disappearing into the bathroom. I chased after it, but it disappeared. I should also mention my older boy hated sleeping on that bed when it had the mirror behind it because he said a boy and a man would tell him to say and do bad stuff to us. Oh, geez, Tim.
God.
Fast forward a few months, and we're living in another house. Again, the same dresser mirror on the floor behind one of the kids' mattresses on the floor next to our bed. My older boy woke up crying in his sleep. So I got back to check on him, and for some reason, I grabbed a blanket and covered the mirror. He stopped crying in his sleep immediately after I did that. I recited a protection prayer, and my wife was able to go back to sleep with our kids. A week later, lights are flashing and a lot of noises were waking my wife. I was sitting on the sofa with our 3-year-old in my arms, and our 4-year-old is asleep next to me. So I recited both of St. Michael's novenas, and everything became peaceful enough to go to sleep. We wound up moving to a new and hopefully permanent house. My wife refuses to get rid of that dresser mirror, but I told her it's not coming into the house. I wrapped it up in a large blanket, and I keep it in the garage for now. It had been fairly peaceful ever since. Apologies for the long email, and again, thanks for all the work you both do. Always a faithful listener, Ed. Thank you, Ed. You know, Zach Bagans might want to buy that mirror and put it up in his museum. Did you hear about his newest acquisition, Tim?
No, what's that?
So Zach Bagans, you know, he's got the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas. And you remember when Donald Trump was running for president?
Yeah.
Remember the naked Trump statues that were popping up?
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
All of them, but one has been destroyed. He bought it for $28,000, Tim.
No.
And he's going to position it in there. Is that the real Hall of Horrors he's trying to show us? A naked Donald Trump? Is that what he's going to start the scare off with?
No. Really?
That's a real thing.
Oh, my God.
Some kids and their money, huh? Hey, Dave and Tim. Sorry it took me a while to write this, as it has to do with a story of mine that you read last year called The Pink Pen. It was a story about my mother, who had passed away several years ago. It had been a week after the submission of my story. It was 5 a.m., and I was on my way to work, listening to your podcast, as I always did. At the time, you had the podcast split up into 3 sections, and on my way in the morning, I had started on the first. My drive was about 20 minutes or so, and as I approached the parking lot, I paused the podcast using the top scroll on my phone. About 10 minutes later, I was in my office and settled in, ready to continue listening. I hit play using the top scroll to resume your podcast. About 2 seconds into it, Dave started to read my story. I couldn't believe it. I was thrilled. It was such an amazing feeling to hear you read one of my stories on air. Once you were finished reading it, I paused it so that I could linger in the moment. But then as I sat there, I began to think, how strange, because you guys never do ParaShare in the first hour of the podcast. It's normally in the third. So I immediately opened my phone, went into the app, and saw that it was exactly 13 minutes and 60 some odd seconds into the third hour. What the hell, I thought. What are the chances that my phone had glitched to that exact moment? I hadn't even gone into the app. I was using my top scroll to play and resume every time. After trying to debunk and come up with not a single explanation, I felt like maybe my mom wanted me to hear my story being played that morning, and perhaps it was her way of letting me know that she's still very much around. Hope you all enjoyed. I still listen to your show every chance I get. I'm hoping one day I'll get the chance to do one of your European trips. Till then, keep up the good work. Christine from Rockaway. Well, thank you, Christine from Rockaway. What a great update on your story. Hey, we're going to Romania. You can check that out. Go to darknessevents.com. All the events I'll be a part of, including my Romanian trip, which will be taking place in September of 2018. There are still a few slots available. You just go to darknessevents.com, click on any one of the banners, and you'll be able to check out all the information there. All right. Here's an email, Tim. Are you ready for this?
Yep.
Hi.
I'm
a new member here. I guess I would describe myself as someone open to the possibility of paranormal, but not really into it big time. This is the first paranormal forum I've ever joined. Perhaps I will join a local one also. I think I got a feeling he copied and pasted this from somebody's website. Well, anyway, this happened about 25 years ago. It happened only once, meaning it hasn't followed me around like some people report. I was driving in Torrington, Connecticut. While driving up a kind of crummy industrial street, I looked forward to see how the street was twisting. Well, about 100 yards ahead of me on the driver's side sidewalk, I saw a figure. I could tell he or she was 1, dark, 2, tall, 3, walking very fast as if in a hurry to get somewhere. Now, my wife was in the car also. I kept my eyes on it. As I approached him or her, perhaps within 30 yards, he suddenly whipped around, Tim. He whipped around looking straight at him.
Whoa.
Now I saw the entire figure, dressed all in black, big, floppy, black leather hat, big, floppy, black cape, black suit, except for a white shirt with perhaps a red string tie, black pointy boots or shoes. He was very tall, over 6'6", and extremely thin. His face, well, it was very long and thin also. He had a jutting jaw, huge dark eyes, heavy brow, and his most prominent feature, an absolutely incredibly long nose. I mean, stunningly so. He was grinning, but not a friendly or cocky grin. It was a menacing, mean grin, a grin that someone would use when they were saying, "I got you," or something hideous like that. And he kept looking at me as I drove past him. Just me, not the car, not my wife, nothing but me. Or so it felt. As I drove past him, I looked in the rearview mirror. He kept his eyes on me. His grin was wider, and perhaps he was laughing. I'd forgotten. I kept driving until he was out of sight. My wife saw him. She confirmed what I saw. Nowadays, though, she isn't so sure. Was this thing perhaps the Hat Man? I've read up on this, and while some things match, others don't. His features were clear, not shadowy. but I was filled with dread, even though it was daytime and there was nothing to really get freaked out about. I don't really shake easy, but he got burned into my head and has been there for 25 years. I've never seen him again. He didn't follow me, and thank God I couldn't handle that. But there was something sinister about him. Usually if I see a weirdo, I may feel sorry for him or her, but this wasn't the case. I was scared, plain and simple. Any ideas? Am I just making a mountain out of a molehill? Thanks for any advice. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I thought that this was my first and only time seeing this character. I even began feeling guilty that I thought this poor soul may have been evil, but now 20 years later, to my amazement, I had a second encounter with this thing. This time under much more puzzling circumstances. I was driving home from work, the road damp from a slight drizzle that had stuck around all day. I'm usually a fast driver, always driving the max speed allowed by Connecticut law. I'm not used to being passed by other vehicles, but looking in my side mirror, I could tell that a car was about to pass me with ease. As he pulled even with me, the car slowed down in order to match my speed and stare into my car. At first, I thought it was a friend who recognized my vehicle. Looking into the car, I saw a man driving all decked out in a big Three Musketeers type hat. I thought he was simply a weird dude until he turned to meet my stare, and it all came rushing back. This was the same guy, or looked like the dude I saw 25 years ago. Same gigantic nose, cheesy mustache, and goatee. Same huge chin. And then he smiled. And it all came flooding back, that terrifying, taunting, evil, teeth-filled grin that sends shivers up my spine. And then something really weird happened to him. Throwing his head back in what I saw as a terrific laugh, or a terrifying laugh, he sped up and pulled ahead of me in the left lane. Then I experienced something I cannot explain. When he was about 20 yards ahead of me, he suddenly took a right-hand turn at 70 miles an hour. He didn't pull into my lane. He just made a 90-degree turn like one would do when turning the corner of a street. I missed his rear quarter panel by mere inches. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I expected to see him spin out of control or smash into another vehicle, but I simply saw him traveling across the highway, heading at high speeds towards the wall lining the freeway. Not a chance he could avoid it. He was hustling towards a sure fatal crash with the wall, when all of a sudden he simply disappeared. There was no crashing sound, no nothing. He was gone. Needless to say, I was shocked. How could a car doing 70 make a 90-degree turn? How did he just disappear? How could I have been the only other car on a busy highway during rush hour? And why 25 years later? Hatman? Weirdo? This episode is much harder to explain than the initial meeting. That's my story. This thing is a creep. Seems to enjoy scaring the shit out of me. Oh, and to make things even weirder, my wife now swears she remembers no such being ever crossing paths with us. Thank you so much for your patience, and that's Nick. Wow, that's creepy, Nick. What do I think it is? I don't know. It could be what they call a harbinger, and harbingers usually show up prior to something negative happening. Maybe he veered in front of you to slow you down enough that you avoided another accident you don't know about up the road. There's a lot of possibilities. If I answered, I'd just be giving you the best guesstimation I've got. Tim, do you have any insight?
I'm with you on it, in that there's so many different possibilities of why that could have happened that you can't speculate on just one. Like Dave said, it could have been any myriad amount of reasons. That could have been not only to save your life, but maybe to avoid it. You might have been slowed down maybe to even save somebody else's life. There might have been a chain reaction in which your slowing down could have saved yourself and maybe many others. You don't know.
There you have it. That's something to consider. And since we're talking about cars, Tim, here are some useful car tips you may not be aware of. If you're speeding down the road in Connecticut at top speeds, Tim, and you see a car with a dark-headed man and a long, pointy nose turn and smile and grin at you, you may want to slow down. Did you also know that a coffee filter and a little bit of olive oil can clean your interior? Removing excess weight from your car is going to help improve gas mileage, and You can place your key fob to your chin to increase its range. Weird, right? Well, here's another tip you might not be aware of. TrueCar helps people find used cars. That's right. TrueCar isn't just for buying new cars. With their certified dealer network and nationwide inventory of nearly 1 million used cars, you'll enjoy real pricing on actual inventory and a simpler buying experience, whether you buy new or used. And with TrueCar, users can see what others paid, so they know if they're getting a good deal before buying. They're also more likely to enjoy a faster buying experience by connecting with TrueCar certified dealers. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, check out TrueCar and enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features, like tall, gangly hatmen and long black leather jackets and big creepy hats, are not in all states, Tim. Some features are not featured in all states. Just remember that. But check out TrueCar when you're ready to make your purchase of your new or previously owned vehicle. Hi, Dave and Tim. My name is Katrine. I think that's what, Katrin? Katrine?
Katrine, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it would be Katrine. I'm writing to you guys from Berlin, Germany, Tim.
Oh.
I love when we get letters from our foreign friends. Mm-hmm. Before I start this email, I have to warn you not about the content or the language, but about possible spelling errors. I know you guys are sticklers for grammar, spelling, and paragraphs. Ain't that right, Tim? Sure. Period, exclamation point. Mm-hmm. So here's so I love how she says this. I have to laugh, Katrine. I have to laugh because this is how I'm going to read it exactly as it's written, Tim.
Okay.
With all flaws in this first paragraph.
All right.
Notice when the flaws begin.
Okay.
Before I start this email, I have to warn you, not about the content or language, but about possible spelling errors. I know you guys are sticklers for grammar, spelling, and paragraphs, so here's a far warning. In Ormum 2017, my autoimmune disorder kicked in full force and inflamed my optical nerve to a level that left me legally blind until a few weeks ago. While I slowly regained my sight, I am far from having my decent level of sight back. I just think it's cute that she's like, everything is fine. You know, everything in the beginning of it's all well written. And the minute she goes, so here's my fair warning, it goes straight into bad spelling. But I understand your situation. Thank you for writing this to us, even though you're dealing with an ocular issue. Anyway, having issued this warning, I have to admit that I wanted to write you gents for years and somehow never got around to it. A lot of episodes tickled my interest, but as per usual, I never found the time, or someone else chimed in before me, like the gent that pointed out that the supposed Bigfoot sounds she captured on tape were obviously coy wolves chit-chatting amongst themselves. Okay, enough intro stuff. Here are my weird experiences during my Ireland vacation and a question about dreams. A few years ago, I finally got a chance to visit Ireland for the first time and ultimately revisited Dublin twice. I see what you did there, right? Her visit was Dublin twice. Dublin twice. Doubled. Anyway, like most women, I'm famous for having absolutely no sense of direction. None. She says that, not me, Tim. I'm not going to put that stereotype on women. During our round trip through Ireland, I was already wandering around with a street map, but I was too occupied by my surroundings to pay much attention. Somehow I felt so safe and familiar that it just seemed natural. Things got seriously weird during my first trip to Dublin. I traveled with my mom, who just figured that I had studied the city beforehand, as I had become mildly obsessed with Ireland. I strolled through the city like I had always lived there and pointed out interests like I had been a tour guide for years. Here's the really weird thing. One of the places we visited was an old jail that had held prisoners from the Independence Uprising and was later used as a setting for several movies. While the place might have been slightly familiar from movies I had seen, it felt utterly and completely familiar as soon as we stepped into the main building. Even though I felt the sadness, fear, and depression and desperation that always hovers in these places, there was also an instant feeling of being protected, safe, almost as though someone constantly had their hand on my shoulder whispering, "It's okay. There's no more harm here." Could you hear that, Tim? Was it too quiet? Oh, I split from the group and explored the rotunda by myself. I peeked down a set of stairs that led into a cellar that seemed darker than it should have been. but it didn't set off any alarm bells in my mind. I then ventured into one of the cells to study the pictures and framed newspaper articles that covered the walls. The moment I walked into the cell, I was hit by a wall of fear and complete panic. I was sure that the door was going to close behind me and I would never get out of this place again. I literally was sure I was going to die in this cell. I was shaking when I turned to leave, and suddenly the light changed. Even though the sun was shining brightly through the little window, the bright white walls were now dark and gray. The pictures and frames had vanished in the murmur of tourist voices had quieted down to a level that it was almost inaudible. I pretty much ran out of the cell and ran right into my mom. The murmuring returned, and when I looked back at the cell, everything was back to normal. I have to apologize. I'm having a little bit of trouble reading through this because there are so many misspellings, Tim. But I understand that our guest, our author here, is having eye issues, but it's the stumbling point, so bear with me. Mm-hmm. Later on, we were out in the yard, and I found myself in front of a small black cross that marked the wall where prisoners had been shot. All I remember is the urge to cross myself. I'm not even close to being religious, let alone Christian, and a deep sense of sadness. My mom ultimately collected me and we left. According to her, I spent several minutes there. I have no memory of that. Several years later, I was back with a friend and could, of course, not resist going back there. Funny thing, we decided to walk there, and I had trouble finding the place, even with a map. Every other trip through Dublin went smoothly as per usual. During our second visit, the urge to cross myself already hit me in the little chapel. Still not religious, but the cell that had scared me out of my skull seemed like a regular place. Then again, that stairway down to the cellar, I couldn't even get close to it. I was damn sure that someone was going to appear in that doorframe. I wasn't going to wait until my suspicion was proven correct. My friend, being a lot more tuned into the supernatural than I am, thinks that there might be a connection to the Emerald Isle, has something to do with a past life or having an old soul. All I know is that I found it impossible to truly feel at home in Berlin. Okay, here's my question. Sorry for the rambling Ireland story. This one is about dreams. On your shows, you repeatedly talked about dreams, about repetitious places and scenes, but I'm not aware of anyone mentioning that their dreams or sleep phase started with the same images or visions. When I was quite young, I had a Murphy bed that could be turned into something that looked like a regular cabinet. Due to the setup, there was a small space between the bed frame, mattress, and the wall. Most of the nights, my dreams started with the feeling of being dragged down into the space by an unseen force. My body slid down between the bed frame and the wall, my sight being blocked for a moment by the wooden bed frame. Then I could actually see what had collected under my bed during the day, including dog toys from our pup, followed by the concrete floor. After that, I would usually start to dream. This only happened in our flat, never in our summer residence. We spent the summer in a garden colony where I had a similar bed, or during any of our vacations, a similarly eerie thing happened. Whenever my father worked the night shift and I slept on his side of the bed next to Mom, more often than not, I would see a white shining figure in the bedroom door. I could not see a face or definitive outlines. All I remember is that it scared the living daylights out of me. I would jump out of bed, run to the nearest wall, and run up the – it would run. Run to the nearest wall and run up the wall. The room stays exactly the same, and I was aware that I was up on the wall, the ceiling being on my left side like a normal wall. I would run around the perimeter of the room, still seeing the top of the wall, noticing the cabinets on my right side. They covered one of the sides of the bedroom wall, and would ultimately approach the wall with the door. Thus, the door somehow scared me more than the thing behind me. Look, I had dreams where I was sitting in all kinds of hallways with staircases, but familiar places from houses I had never seen from the inside. I have a vivid memory of walking from a nap in a room with a long dark red curtains covering most of the French windows, knowing that the kid in the bed next to mine was a kid that would later be a classmate, even though my mom swears he never visited the family until I had been at school for a few years. But these two preludes to dreams always left me baffled. Any ideas or suggestions are most welcome. And unless my rambling bored you to tears, I'd be happy to provide you with more stories from Ireland or the weirdness I sometimes experience around my friends that are more tuned into the supernatural world. Thank you, from Caracosa. And that's Katrine. Well, Katrine, send in more stories. Just do me a favor. If you have a friend that can proof for you or hit the spell check, that'd make it a lot easier for me. It sounds to me like classic out-of-body experiences, astral projection, Tim. I don't know where you stand on that, but it sounds like that's what she was going through.
The second story, when you're describing standing on
when she's feeling herself sinking through the bed, through the, seeing the stuff underneath the floor, and as soon as she'd hit the concrete, she'd start dreaming. I think she was leaving her body and then hit the astral realm.
Well, especially being on the ceiling and on the wall and up near the door and all that. Yeah, that sounds like out of body stuff to me.
Yeah.
The stuff with having to cross herself in that first scenario, that really seems like past life stuff to me. That seems like you're transporting yourself right back there, and especially when you feel like you're losing time or you're losing yourself, I think you're putting yourself right back there into that spot, and you're actually having that memory, but you're not consciously remembering that you're having that memory of being there.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. All right. Hey, Dave, I'm a longtime listener. I'm a 19-year-old from Utah, and I've had a few terrifying experiences. Let me start from the earliest. Growing up as a kid, my house was chaotic. My parents, who later divorced, would fight constantly, sometimes very violently. My father was borderline abusive, and eventually we split ways and our relationship came to a close. My house had a very negative feeling to it, like the walls absorbed the anger and spit it back out at me in gentle whispers. I used to have momentary pauses where there was vague silence in my house. I would hear snapshots of conversations, little blurbs of words and sentences that would pass in and out, sort of like someone turning through television channels. One time I was particularly frightened by a specific and loud female voice repeatedly saying, "Katie, Katie." I rushed to my mom in near tears, and she was shocked. She sat me down and asked if I had ever heard the name before. I had. Turns out she had a close cousin named Katie who died in a horrific car accident when she was a teenager. It was the oddest, most terrifying coincidence I had ever encountered. Another time, before I cut contact with my father, we were staying in a motel when the mirror fell off the bathroom wall and shattered into the bathtub at about 2 a.m. Glass flew so far it landed on the bed. It petrified me. Not only that, but it left this crippling fear deep inside my soul. It was just a terrifying thought, being faced with this grim reality that perhaps something or someone could reach out and make a colossal impact on our reality. Besides that, a lot of things in my home would fall off the walls. There would be knocks at night. I would see shifting shadows out of the corner of my eye, and at one point I felt something almost evil slash my back. It left long white lines down my back between the patches of irritated skin where something touched me. The floor would creak above me like someone was walking across the floor. I had a few other things, but these are my primary experiences. Well, thank you for sharing with us, Alec. We appreciate that. It does sound interesting and weird. I do have to mention a funny story, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm always open on the show. I've always been open on the show. And when I have weird stuff happen, I talk about it. So I get an email the other day, and this person's like, "Oh, so you moved into another haunted house. You need to go get a mental checkup." And, of course, the person's using a fake email forwarding address.
Yeah.
I just have to laugh. People, are you that lame? Here's the deal. You're not hurting my feelings. You must hate me, but you still listen, and that's all that matters. So I'm just going to send you a little electronic hug right now. That little hug from me to you. Thank you for listening. Whether you like me or not, thank you for being there and letting us take up your time.
Oh.
I'm a giver, Tim. I'm a giver.
You are.
All right. Okay. Ready, Tim?
Ready.
Our next and final email of the evening. All right. This is a long one, so we're going to get to it. All right. I've experienced a fair share of weird things in my life. Not exactly sure what was going on or how to explain them, but I know they're all happened, and none of them were dreams. I'll try to tell them in order, at least in the order that I remember them happening to me or someone I know. It may be a fairly long email, but I might as well send them all in one shot while I've got the chance. I must have been about 5 or 6 years old, 30 years now, living in Montreal at the time. My older sister and I shared a room back then. Since she was older, she had the top bunk and I slept on the lower part of the bunk. I remember, it's a bunk bed story, Tim. You know how I love bunk bed stories. Mm-hmm. The gateway to hell are beds that are made of bunk, Tim. Is that why they're called bunk beds? Since she was older, she had the top bunk. I slept on the lower part of the bunk bed. I remember the bed being up against a wall with my feet being close to a window. We lived on the ground floor of a 3-floor apartment building. My parents' room was down the hall and to the right, just near the front door. One night, I woke up to go to the bathroom, and I couldn't move. I could see everything, hear everything, move my head around, move my hands, but my legs, arms, and the rest of my body were totally useless. I couldn't move them to save my life. Not sure why it didn't bother me at first, just thought it was a little strange, but went right back to sleep. I woke up again a little later that night, I guess still having to go to the bathroom, but was still unable to move. At this point, I'm getting scared. I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary, but I could literally feel something sitting on me. It felt as if someone were kneeling on my chest, pushing my body down at the shoulders. I could feel this, but visually, there wasn't anything there. So now I'm crying and I'm terrified. I tried to call out to my sister who was sleeping just a few feet above me, but I couldn't speak. Well, not entirely true. I could speak, or at least I was able to hear myself, but it came out as a very breathy whisper. You've paid a lot of women to do that for you, haven't you, Tim?
More than
breathy
you know.
Whispers?
Yeah.
Oh, you're so sexy, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back here. Oh, I want to walk through it like it's not on shag pile carpeting.
I pay him extra to braid it.
I can still hear the creepy, ghostly sound I made that night. One of the scariest horror movie type whispers I've ever heard. Oh, damn, I want to walk barefoot through your back hair. Try taking a deep breath and exhaling it all at once while speaking really quietly. That's what it was like. All right, I'll take that challenge. Hi, everybody. Who wants to go over here and have some beer and chips with me? I'm going to be... That doesn't sound scary when I do it.
No,
especially
it really
offering beer and chips. I remembered my ears slowly filling with tears once I realized I could no longer call for help. That is terrifying. I'm not trying to make light of your situation, but you challenge me to whisper, I will do it. I tried with all my might to get up, and it felt like I'd be able to if I could just push hard enough, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I may as well have been trying to lift a truck. It wasn't heavy. I mean, it wasn't as if whatever it was hurting me because of its weight. I gave it all I had, but whatever was happening to me was just too much for a 6-year-old me to move. Then I got the idea to bang on the wall, hoping it would wake my sister and annoy her enough to come down to see what the heck was going on. Even though the bed was literally against the wall, I wanted to bang. I couldn't reach it. Now I'm freaking out, trying to call mom and dad, trying all I could, when all of a sudden it just stopped. I felt whatever it was get off my chest, and it was gone just like that. At that very second, my voice came back, and I ran faster than I had ever run before, yelling the whole way to my parents' room. I told them what happened, not exactly sure if they believed me or not, but I ended up sleeping in their bed that night. No way was I going to go back to my room that night. Looking back, I left my poor sister in there with it all alone. That's how it says it on here, Tim. Oh, well, she was fine. This happened to me several more times throughout my life, but only once while living in Montreal. We moved a few years after that to Ottawa. Each time it happens, I wake up lying on my back. I don't ever want to go sleep on my back. It's just not comfortable for me. It's so odd. The second time it happened, I was about 16 or so. I had my own room this time, almost all the same details. And again, I ran to my parents and told them what had happened. Maybe 7 or 8 more times after that, I was asleep in the basement of our newest home. We moved quite a bit. I had a dog at the time, and I often leave the door open a little because she liked to come in with me and either sleep with me or lay on the floor in my room. I'm probably 18 or 19 at this point. So one night I woke up because I felt that what I thought was my dog jump on the bed with me, which was very normal, so I didn't even think twice about it. I noticed I was on my back and tried to get up. Sure enough, I couldn't. Then, right in my ear, as almost if it was telling me a secret, I could hear a pretty loud growl. I thought it was my dog reacting to whatever was going on in my room. As usual, whatever it was just left on its own. I jumped up and was going to check on my dog, but she wasn't in my room. and my door was closed. I could usually hear my dog walking on the floor above because her nails would click with each step. Noticed I didn't hear that. All I knew, something weird was going on. I went up to look for her, and she was asleep in my parents' room with the door closed as well. Don't know what was in my room that night or what growled in my right ear, but I do know it wasn't my dog. She had nothing to do with it. I've read about all sorts of things, old hag and sleep paralysis to name a few. What I've read about sleep paralysis mostly makes sense for my situation, but I don't see how I'd be able to physically feel something that isn't there. Not sure what to think. Ghost, witch, goblin, succubus, sleep paralysis, whatever it is, it's absolutely terrifying to experience, and I hate it. Somebody once asked me how I knew I wasn't dreaming the whole thing, which is a logical question. I then asked her if she was dreaming or if she was awake. It's quite obviously really sometimes dream about it happening, but always realize it was a dream once I was awake. The ones I mentioned were 100% real. I was wide awake for all of them. Story number 2. My aunt used to live pretty much in the forest. She still lives in the same house, but most of the forest in her area has been cut down to make houses and stores, etc. I was out playing in her backyard one day, swinging on the tire swing. She had up in a large tree, playing with the bugs and frogs I found. Must have been maybe about 9 years old at the time. She had a big yard that went pretty far back. Just after her fence was the forest. Not sure on the actual size because everything seems so much bigger when you're small, but it was pretty big. I'd often see deer, foxes, rabbits, and that sort of thing. I remember I was kneeling down when I heard a bunch of twigs and branches snapping. I looked up and saw a huge brown blur run past her fence. On the forest side, it was moving so quickly I couldn't even really see what it was. It was only able to make out the size and color, and it was fast. I ran back to the house and remember my mother and aunt asking if I was okay. I guess I must have looked as if I had seen a ghost, but I told them everything was fine. Years later, I mean maybe 15 years later, my sister and I were talking about the good old days of when we were kids and the things we'd do. She mentioned something about seeing Bigfoot in our aunt's yard one day and mentioned how fast it was. I immediately got defensive thinking she was making fun of me, then quickly realized I'd never told her or anybody about what I saw that day. Either there was something out there back in the 80s and early 90s, or we both saw something that never happened. Story number 3. I like this, Tim. Just a bunch of stories in a row. Real easy. Bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
One night I was getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth with the bathroom door open. I was standing facing the mirror, which was facing down the hall, with my sister's room on the same side as the bathroom and my parents' room right in the corner. So their room is right next to the bathroom. While brushing my teeth, I saw a small cat-sized blur zoom past the bathroom door and into my parents' room. We didn't have any pets, so I wondered what I just saw. I stepped into the hall and noticed my sister standing there, looking toward our parents' room. She asked me if I saw it too. We both went into their room, closed the door, and searched high and low, but never found anything. Neither of us have any idea what we saw, but we both know we saw something. Story 4. I lived in a house, same house where I heard the growling, where the top floor was just a loft. My sister's room was the loft, and my room was in the basement. Because of the house's design, we were able to speak with each other without actually leaving our rooms. I'd just stand at the bottom of the steps, look up, and she'd look down to chat. About 17 years ago, I used to work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Work wasn't too far from home, but I lived in Quebec and worked in Ontario and took the bus. So it was quite a long ride with all the bus transfers and all. I'd leave home just before 6 a.m. So one day after work, I decided to go to my old neighborhood to visit some friends. It was getting pretty late, so I decided to walk to the bus stop. I called home to let my parents know that when they could expect me. My sister answered the phone, but sounded very unsure of who I was. I thought she was kidding around as usual, but played the game anyway. "It's me, your brother, Jason," I said. She asked me where I was, and I told her I'd been at a friend's house in our previous neighborhood. I told her I went there right after work and hadn't been home all day. There was a brief moment of silence. Then I was able to hear my mother talking in the background. She asked my sister who was on the phone. My mother took the phone from my sister and asked me who I was, and I told her and was confused at this point. She sounded really worried when I was explaining to her that I would be home soon. She told me that my sister and I have been talking like we normally do all night. They didn't see me, but they heard whatever it was that was impersonating me. I didn't see or hear anything this time since I wasn't home, but both my mom and sister were equally freaked out. Ooh, that's a good one. That gave me some willies right there.
Yeah.
I'll look up the date on this next story for you once I get a chance. You don't have to. Who knows what I'll find? I was on my way home from Montreal back to Ottawa one night. A friend and I went to see the band Machine Head play, which is how I'll find the exact date. It must have been around 1 a.m. or so. I had a 2010 Mazda 3 at the time, which had the automatic headlight features. I loved it because I never had to do anything but my lights would go on in the dark and turn off when it's light. I don't know if you've ever been to that part of Canada, but the roads between Ottawa and Montreal are filled with trees and not much more. Total darkness at night. If your headlights aren't on, you're probably going to die. That type of dark. So I'm on the DD, driving my drunken friend. Oh, I'm the DD, so the designated driver, driving my drunken friend back home. Before you ask, I had 0 drinks that night, and I don't do drugs. I was 100% sober driving home. It's dark. We're talking and laughing when all of a sudden the sky lights up like it's daytime. Actually bright, as if it were noon or so. I thought maybe it was some sort of plane or a helicopter with searchlights, a comet or something like that. I didn't see a thing, though. My drunk friend asked what was going on, and we were both puzzled. Then my car's headlights turned off because there was no need for them to be on. This whole thing lasted about 10 seconds, maybe a bit less, but long enough for my lights to react. Suddenly, it was dark again, so I'm left driving on the highway at about 100 kilometers an hour with no lights on. It only took a few seconds for them to activate, but it was pretty scary since it was unexpected. Not sure what that was, but I like that story. Number 6. More recently, only about a year and a half ago, I noticed a ganglion cyst on my foot. Went to the doctor to have it checked because it was quite hard and painful. My doctor sent me to get an ultrasound and an x-ray to be sure it was just a cyst and nothing serious. We went in, did the test, waited a few weeks, and then went back to my doctor for the results. Did you step on something or maybe get shot, maybe with a BB gun as a child? Those were the first things my doctor asked. I told him I didn't and would most likely remember being shot. He then showed me the x-ray and asked me how I got metal in my foot. A long, awkward moment of silence that seemed to last forever went by. I told him I had no idea. I didn't even know there was metal in there in the first place. I asked him to tell me how it was possible. I was sent back for more x-rays to make sure that they were done properly since I claimed I had no idea how the metal could have possibly entered my foot. Sure enough, the x-rays were done properly. There was metal in there all right. So I was scheduled for surgery to have the metal and cyst removed, but when it came time to have it done, the surgeon recommended leaving the metal in because of its location. It was pretty embedded in the muscle and tissues on the side top of my foot and would most likely cause more damage to take it out than it would be to leave it in. I must have had 7 or so different people come in and look at the x-ray and ask all sorts of questions about how it got there. What was it? If it hurt? I told them all the same thing. No clue. Anyway, the metal is still in my foot. I even have the x-rays to show it. I mention this because a lot of my friends are interested in things like aliens and the paranormal. One of them mentioned that maybe what I experienced in bed all those times wasn't actually sleep paralysis, but an alien encounter. And what that metal was some sort of implant. Yep, I know that's crazy, but I can't say yes or no to anything, really, since I have no clue what's in my foot, how it got there, or what sometimes happens to me when I'm in bed at night. Oh, I walk through a metal detector every day at work, but whatever is in my foot never sets it off for some reason. Sorry about the length of this. Just wanted to get it all out in one shot. I don't think I missed anything. Thanks, and that comes from Jason. Very cool. Very cool, Jason. Hey, thanks a lot for sharing all those great stories. I'd love to see that x-ray. Can you shoot me a copy of the x-ray with the piece of metal in you? I'd love to see that. Just the kind of guy I am, Tim. I want to see it. Well, that's it for today. We're going to wrap it up tomorrow. We're back with True Crime Tuesday, Tim. People can subscribe simply by going to darknessradio.com. Click on the True Crime Tuesday banner and subscribe. You're going to get the best in true crime talk radio, plus dumb crimes and stupid criminals. And we also have an edition of I Knew a Murderer. We have a bunch of new stories from listeners, Tim, that knew a murderer and had interaction with them. That'll be a part of tomorrow's show as well. So check it out for yourself. That's it for today. I'm Dave. That's Tim. And this has been the best in paranormal talk radio. Tell them what it is, Tim.
It's Beyond the Darkness, Dave.
Well, you sound reticent about it, but you're right, it is. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Volcano damage. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. It's not clear when Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is going to stop erupting. At least 26 homes have been destroyed. Lava is spewing several hundred feet into the air. Steve Clapper lives near the volcano and said if this was a fire, it would be easier to deal with.
Okay, that tree's on fire, I better leave. But, there's a crack in the ground. Well, I've seen cracks in the pavement before, but I didn't know that meant that there's a lava tube underneath there.
Molten rock, toxic gas, and steam have been bursting through openings in the ground created by the volcano. On Twitter, President Trump says what he calls the Russia witch hunt is rapidly losing credibility. The president is also defending Gina Haspel, the nominee to head the CIA, who has come under fire because of her involvement in detaining and brutally interrogating terror suspects after 9/11. The president tweeted, Democrats think she's too tough on terror. I'm Ed Donahue.